All right, so now we're going to go over a few more scheduling tools that we have. That'll be the daily schedule tool and the multi-schedule tool. So the default is set that whenever you click a box normally, you're on the daily schedule tool. This is for when you need to make any changes day to day, whether that be a single day absence or a single day that you want to add an employee or remove an employee, you would simply click on that cell. So let's say that we want to change around the day of Friday the 11th for Pluto here. If I click on Friday the 11th, the box is going to come up that we've seen before. In our last video, we talked about adding, replacing, and removing shift patterns here. We're going to ignore that because we're dealing with just a single day that we clicked on. We could see here that if we wanted to change this from Pluto practice, we could change it to a different employee just by hitting change and going to that drop-down list there. We could also flex this shift time, meaning that we could change the time of this shift to reflect a different amount of time, whether that be half the shift or whatever it may be. And that would just show up that single shift individually down below at the bottom of your schedule with the new time attached to it. Another thing that we could do, which is really common, is marking an employee as absent. You could do this ahead of time or afterwards. You could mark this employee as absent, and you could mark what they were absent for. This will show up later on a reports page. Other things that we could do is change the shift details. We could add stars. What stars are is an incentive for the employees to pick up that shift. Some facilities use stars as an incentive, like for a raffle, for example. And if the more stars you have, the more raffle tickets you might have. If you don't use stars or any sort of incentive in your facility, you could ignore that box right there. You could also attach a bonus to this shift to make it more incentivized. If you clicked yes, you could also add the details to that bonus down below. You could also make this shift overtime eligible. This is a really common one in most facilities because maybe a shift is super needed and you don't mind that someone's going to go into overtime to pick up that shift. If you don't care if it puts your employees over that 40-hour limit, you can make it overtime eligible right here. And it'll put a red box around that shift. Again, that would be just for open shifts, right? You wouldn't put that around an individual's name unless you were manually putting them in. But if you have open shifts in the future that you really need picked up, you could make them overtime eligible right there if you're not concerned with that. Another thing that you could do for an individual shift is make a special assignment. For example, some common ones would be one-to-one, on call, called off, whatever it may be. We've got a lot of different options for special assignments. This is simply for record keeping. You could look back in your records to see who is on what special assignment when. Another thing you could do is change the shift assignments. In a later video, we'll be talking more in depth about shift assignments and how you could change them the most efficiently. But right here, if you clicked on an individual day and you knew that Pluto was going to veer away from his default shift assignment and work CNA East 1, you could change it for that day as well. If you were to do that, you would just save that shift assignment. That way it would show up in the system. You could also update the assignment details. If you wanted to have a detail attached to CNA East 1, you could say, for example, what rooms that Pluto is working on CNA East 1 for that day. You could say rooms 1 through 10, or 1 through 10 right here. If you update that assignment detail and save it, that detail will be attached to this shift assignment until you change it again. Okay, for now we're just going to close out of this shift as we've walked you through that. And what we're going to do is show you the multi-schedule tool now and the options that it has. So if we're wanting to do similar things but for multiple days at a time, we could click the multi-schedule tool right here. If I click the multi-schedule tool, it's now on, it's activated. What I could do now is when I click on Pluto for the 11th, it doesn't pull up that box. It actually just highlights the cell that I clicked on. I can then click more days if I wanted to. So let's say, for example, that Pluto was actually just going to take vacation starting on Friday and going all into the week after, right? He's not coming back to work until Monday the 21st. I could highlight all of these days, and then I could hit schedule shifts right here. This is going to pull up a similar box to what we saw before when we clicked the daily schedule tool. So when this pops up, I'm going to show you the different options that we have now with the multi-schedule tool, which compares to the daily schedule tool. So again, I could remove the assignment that of Pluto being there. I could change the employee if I wanted to. I could add stars or a bonus or overtime eligibility. I could give it a special assignment, and I could change the shift assignment. Now, any of these changes will change it for all the days that I picked. Same thing with employee absence. This is the most common one, and this is what we're using for this example, right? We could say that Pluto is absent for that whole week because of vacation, right? So we could say what type of absence it was right here. Let's just say it was vacation. And what we can do is save this shift assignment or save this assignment that we've made with the multi-schedule tool. And what it'll do is mark that absence for Pluto for those days. When there's absences, what it'll do is instead of Pluto's name being in the box, it'll pop up with a UA, which stands for unassigned, because now those shifts are unassigned. Pluto's no longer assigned to them. A yellow box pops up around it, as you can see, showing that there is an absence there. Overtime eligibility pops up with a red box. And if someone is requesting a day off through their employee app for that day and for their name, there will be a purple box around it. So those are the three boxes and what they do. Absences are yellow, overtime eligibility is red, and someone requesting time off or that day off is purple. That is the multi-schedule tool. Again, typically it's used for absences or making changes, but you could also schedule an individual with it. Maybe you've got an employee who doesn't have a cell phone with the app for whatever reason, and maybe they're wanting to pick up some of these shifts. You could select those open shifts right here that you've opened up in the app, and then you could schedule that individual right here as well. Again, through that same process of just clicking on the person's name, saving that assignment, and then they'll show up right here for those days that you clicked for the open shifts, right? So it'll be down here. You could click on Mini, for example. Maybe Mini's picking up those open in-app shifts, and then you could save that for the day. For now, I'm just going to exit out, and that's the daily schedule tool and the multi-schedule tool for you. If there's any questions, you could always just visit our help center. Thank you.